So the other day, I was riding in the passenger seat while my friend was driving. And I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm always the one driving. So anytime I get to be in the passenger seat, I'm like, oh, this is kind of nice. I like this. So I get to sit back, I get to look around, I get to actually notice things instead of watching the road, checking the mirrors, figuring out what lane I need to be in, and making sure that nobody's about to do something crazy in traffic. And since it's spring, everything is so lush outside. The trees were full, the grass was green, and everything just looked so alive. I am a huge nature fan, if you can't tell. And I'm sitting there and I'm taking it all in. And I had one of those random questions that honestly, it sounds like it came from a 5-year-old. And I was like, why do plants need light? Like, specifically light. Why is the heat not good enough? Because the sun, it gives off both, right? It gives off light, it gives off warmth. And because I'm a millennial, I naturally pulled out my phone and I Googled it. And of course, Google immediately starts breaking down photosynthesis. I already know about photosynthesis. I learned that a long time ago, but I was just curious about light specifically. I'm not going to turn this into a science class or science lesson, so don't worry. But the basic idea is what really stood out to me. Plants don't use light because it feels good. They are using the light because light is the thing that helps them make food. It's the thing that actually lets them grow. Heat, it can make the room comfortable, but comfort is not nourishment. A plant, it can sit in a warm room and slowly die if it never gets light. And when I read that, I remember thinking, oh, that sounds a little familiar. Because I think a lot of us spend years trying to grow while surrounded by things that feel comfortable, but aren't actually helping us become who we're trying to become. Hello, my powerful people. This is the In Full Power Podcast, and I'm your host, Jasmine Conway. They're not actually helping us grow into the people that we are trying to grow into. And before we go any further, I want to be clear about something. This episode is not about blaming yourself. It's not about me saying you need more discipline. It's not about me saying that you're not trying hard enough. Honestly, this episode is the opposite because I think when we're struggling, we immediately assume that the problem is us. Maybe I'm lazy. Maybe I'm not motivated enough or committed enough, or maybe I just need to try harder. And sometimes, yes, effort matters. Of course it does. But what if sometimes the issue is not your effort? What if the issue is your environment? And I learned this in the most regular, everyday way. Years ago, I had a roommate and we just had completely different lifestyles when it came to food. And listen, I live with type 1 diabetes, so I try to be mindful of what I eat. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. But I know what helps me feel good. And I know what sends me into a spiral of, okay, what are we doing? This is making your blood sugars crazy, what have you. And my roommate always had the best snacks in the house. I'm talking cookies, brownies, ice cream, treats, all the good stuff. The stuff that I would never buy for myself because I know me. And that season taught me something very important about my version of discipline. My version of discipline is not walking past cookies 10 times a day and going, I'm strong, I'm powerful, I will not touch the cookie. No. My version of discipline is not bringing the cookies into the house in the first place. Because once they're in my house, the odds are no longer in my favor. My success rate plummets. And for a while, I treated that like a willpower problem. Like, why can't I just be stronger? Why can't I just have just one cookie? And I kept thinking that the answer was building discipline. Like, if I could just, white knuckle my way through, the habit would stick. But changing habits while living with the very thing that breaks them is a losing game. So every single day, I was relying on willpower to do a job. But eventually, I had to be honest with myself. The issue was not discipline. This was not a discipline issue. This was an environment issue. Because if I'm trying to become the healthiest version of myself, I need an environment that actually supports that version of me. And does that mean I'm never going to eat a cookie again? Please, no. That is not my ministry. It just means that I had to stop pretending that I could grow well in conditions that were working against me the whole time. And once I saw it there, I started seeing this everywhere, like with running. For a while, I wanted to be a runner. And people say things like, just start running. And yeah, technically, sure. But what actually changed things for me was joining a run club, because all of a sudden I'm around people who made running feel normal. Running wasn't this extreme thing that only super disciplined, super in shape people do. Running was just Tuesday. It's just what we do on Tuesdays. So people were waking up early, training for races, talking about pace and shoes and routes and recovery. And I was just like, oh, this is just what we do here. I don't mean it became easy. Running is still running. It is still very difficult for me. But it became easier to imagine myself as someone who belonged in that world. Sometimes you don't need a whole new personality. Sometimes you just need to be around people who make the thing that you're trying to grow into feel possible. And it's not just habits. Think about something bigger. Think about building something of your own. One of the hardest parts of building something isn't the work itself, it's that you're often doing something that nobody around you really understands. You're talking about content, speaking, starting a business, creating something from nothing, and people around you might love you and support you, but they've never done it. And so every risk sounds dangerous, or every setback sounds like proof that you should just stop or quit. And every slow month might sound like a failure. And then you get around other people who are building things too, and suddenly you realize, oh, this is not failure. This is just part of it. Same exact situation, different environment, and the environment completely changes what feels possible for you. And then there's one of the things that's probably been the biggest lesson for me: relationships. Because I am very expressive. I am a deep thinker, I'm a deep feeler, and I don't really do well with superficial. I mean, I can be casual, I can be light, I can have fun, but if everything stays on the surface all the time, I will start to feel like a shell of myself. And that's something that I had to learn the hard way, because there have been times where I tried to fit myself into dynamics that part of me wasn't really embraced, where my depth felt like it was too much, or my questions felt like it was too much because I'm very inquisitive, or my feelings felt like too much, or where wanting some real meaningful connection felt like I was asking for a lot. And I don't like who I become in those spaces. I start editing myself. I start overthinking or wondering if I should say less or feel less or need less or ask less. And that is not the version of myself that I am trying to grow into. So I've gotten very intentional about who I spend my time with. And it's not in a harsh way. And it's not in a you're bad, I'm good kind of way. It's just in a very honest way, because the conversations that I keep having, they affect me. The people that I keep choosing, they affect me. And when I'm around people who embrace the fact that I am thoughtful and sensitive and passionate, I grow differently. I feel more open. I feel more authentic. I feel more alive. And somewhere along the way, I realized that I don't want to spend my life being tolerated in places where I could be embraced somewhere else. And I'm going to be honest with you. Choosing your environment it's not always clean. It's not always the freeing thing that it sounds like. Sometimes it means that you're disappointing people, or that you're outgrowing a friendship that you genuinely loved. And sometimes people are going to feel some type of way about it. And you have to be okay with being a little misunderstood. Changing your environment, it can feel lonely before it feels like some liberating experience. And I don't want to skip past that because it's real. But I will say that I have never once regretted making room for the version of me that actually gets to breathe, the version of me that I actually want to be and become. And I'm not saying that your environment is everything. No, I'm not saying that effort doesn't matter either. And I'm not saying that you should only stay where it feels easy, because that's not real life. And that's not growth either. Because sometimes growth, it absolutely requires discomfort. Sometimes it means stepping out of your comfort zone on purpose. Sometimes it requires discipline. Sometimes it requires hard conversations or doing the thing when you don't feel like doing the thing. But there's a difference between being challenged and constantly being in conditions that work against the person that you're trying to become. There's a difference between stretching yourself and starving yourself of what you need in order to grow. And here's the part that I want you to really think about, because we do this constantly. We do it all the time. We want confidence while surrounding ourselves with criticism. We want health while building a life that makes a healthy choice harder. We want stronger relationships while avoiding the hard conversations that actually create connection. And we want different outcomes without changing the conditions that actually produce those different outcomes. Imagine taking a plant and putting it in a dark closet and never giving it any light and then getting frustrated that it's not growing. That sounds ridiculous. It sounds crazy. But we do versions of that to ourselves all the time. And then we think of it as some sort of character flaw. Now, I know that some of you are probably already thinking, that's nice, but I can't just leave. I can't just change my environment like that. And you're right. Sometimes you can't. You can't always just quit the job or swap out of your family or pick a different season of life just because this season is hard. So this is not about burning everything down or changing everything and walking away. When you genuinely cannot change the environment, there are two other things that you can do. Number one, you can change your exposure to it. How much of this environment that you let in, how close you stand to it, how much access it gets to your head. And the other thing that you can do, the second thing, is that you can build another environment that actually feeds you. Maybe there's a friend that you call after the draining meeting, or the group chat that really just understands you and gets you, or the 30 minutes that you reserve specifically for yourself, or the run club, or the space where you get to be the most full version of yourself. So the place that shrinks you isn't going to be the only voice you hear. You're probably not going to get to choose every room you're in, but you almost always get to choose what you put next to it. And I think the real work here is not beating yourself into shape. It's just getting honest about what you specifically need, because we're all different. And, maybe one person, they can keep sweets in the house and never touch them and never feel tempted. That's amazing. I am not that person. Or maybe there's someone who thrives working from home and somebody else needs the structure of an office. Maybe there's one person who they feel so alive in a big city and another person needs a small town. The goal is not to find the perfect environment, but the goal is to understand yourself well enough to recognize what actually is going to support your growth. So instead of asking yourself, can I handle this? Because most of us, we can handle a lot. Maybe the better questions are, what conditions bring out the version of me that I actually recognize, the version of me that I actually want? What helps me follow through? What makes it easier to keep the promises that I make to myself? Is it the people around me? Is it the conversations I'm in, the information I'm consuming, the content I'm consuming, the spaces that I keep putting myself in? What is it that I need more of? And also, what do I need less of, less access to? Because the plant isn't bad. The plant's not broken. The plant's not failing. The plant simply needs what it needs. And maybe that's true for you too. So before you decide that you're the problem, before you assume that you just need more discipline, before you convince yourself that you are incapable, ask yourself whether you've given yourself the conditions that support the kind of growth that you keep asking from yourself. Because growth is not just about effort, it's also about environment. And here's the thing, you don't have to overhaul your whole life. That is overwhelming. Just pick one environment and change one thing in it. Don't fix yourself, move the cookies. Add one person who gets you. Mute the thing that drains you. Put yourself in one room where the thing that you're trying to become already feels normal. One small change to the conditions. That's it. Because for a plant, light is the thing that actually feeds it. And I think for us, light is whatever does the same. Honesty, a real conversation, people who don't flinch at your depth, spaces where you don't have to become someone different. Heat just keeps you comfortable, and light is what helps you grow. And sometimes the breakthrough isn't becoming a completely different person. Sometimes it's finally putting yourself somewhere where you can actually grow. So this week, maybe roll the window down, notice what's around you, and ask whether it's giving you light or just heat. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. If this resonated with you, share it with another powerful person who needs to hear it. I'm Jasmine Conway. This is the Info Power Podcast. I'll talk to you next time.